Hi, I'm Sean Cantwell, and this is the new Scaling Success podcast. We started Scaling Success to provide a space for entrepreneurs and business leaders to discuss the important topics that contribute to building a valuable and long-lasting enterprise, and to juxtapose our view as investors with that of entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs who are on the front lines. Episodes are now on Spotify. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Andrew Waitman, CEO of Assent Compliance, a supply chain data management business headquartered in Ottawa and operating globally, and one of the fastest growing businesses in Canada. Assent also happens to be a Volition Capital portfolio company, so I have had the privilege of working closely with Andrew over the past 5 years and have had a front row seat to watch the company's tremendous progress along the way. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the invitation to join.
All right, great. There are a bunch of topics we're hoping to cover today, Andrew, but before we dive into those, I think it would be helpful for our listeners to know a little bit more about your background and the series of events that led to you becoming the CEO at Assent Compliance.
Sure. So let's start with Assent. So I've been here just over 6 years now. I was boxing with one of the founders, a young gentleman named Matt Whitaker, who was my boxing coach. And I had previously taken a DBA services business, global DBA service business, from about 40 people when I joined to about 400, about just under 5 million to about 50 million. And Matt offered me an office because I said, Matt, I don't want to jump into anything too quickly, but I would like an office to go to. So I joined in September 2014. And as you know, Sean, because you joined the journey in 2016, it's been one hell of a ride, and we'll get into that. My previous background, I've kind of had multiple careers. In some sense, I started off as a software engineer, writing software for telephone switches for Nortel. I then did an MBA, and so I ended up in investment banking, worked for Citibank on the derivatives desk on the trading floor, and did that for a couple of years. Then when I was really missing tech, so I became a tech analyst in a second-tier boutique firm, and from there I met a billionaire who had founded Mitel and Newbridge, and he asked me to help him during one of the greatest venture times, 1995 to kind of 2000, and I guess I was there till about 2008. I ran a venture fund called Celtic House Venture Partners. So that was extraordinary time to be a managing partner of a emerging stage. We had one of the best top 10 of all time IRRs. I would think it was 110%. It was a fabulous experience. And then from that, after the 2008 financial implosion, I got the chance to become an operator. I was invested personally in this DBA services business, and the founder asked me to come in and help out. I volunteered, and then he asked me to take over the company, which I did for 5 years. So it's a bit of an eclectic mix. I'm formerly an engineer by original, but do have a CFA and an MBA as well. So had a lot of adventures, a lot of different adventures.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing journey, and thanks for sharing that with us. That's not exactly the type of career that you can script, but I think speaks to your eye for opportunity and the ability to kind of assess the opportunities around you and step into those roles and create value. It's a great story. I think one of the things that's really interesting about your role at Assent Compliance is you stepped into the business while it was still a young company, and there were 3 co-founders, and you came in as the proverbial suit, if you will, to provide adult supervision. And I'm curious, I think a lot of entrepreneurs experience similar situations when you step into a new environment as the outsider. And I'm curious just how you approached that role and how you were able to, so successfully integrate with the team.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Sean. So you are right. And I would say a couple of points I would make. my experience as I probably sat on 35 boards over my venture career and still sit on some tech. So when you sit on boards, and you know this, Sean, you do get an appreciation for founders, okay? And there's lots of good in founders, and then, you know, everything from the new shiny, chase the new shiny thing. So there's a yin and a yang to founders, okay? And that experience allowed me to work with the founder at Pythian, which was prior to Assent, and then these three founders. And the other thing, being an early stage venture capitalist, was you get really comfortable with risk, and you get really comfortable with what you would call chaos, okay? And so, and then because I had cut my teeth in this DBA services business, I really found my sea legs with regards to an operational role. I had never really held a senior operational role before I took over Pythian. So I did a lot of learning, you know, in real time. But when I came into the Assent context, I was much more confident. But also I understood the role of humility. I really did, Sean. Like, when you come in with three guys, it's their baby. You know, they have been running it for several years. And so you really have to kind of be careful not to move too quickly, find out where people are at. And frankly, as a volunteer, it's a good way to do it, because if the marriage doesn't work, it's no harm, no foul. You know, I was literally just using an office and giving them advice, but we started working together fairly intensely. And so I think part of the first thing to your question is, you know, what is the chemistry? Who's doing what? And what are the big gaps? One of the first things that Matt's mom was helping them with recruiting, and that wasn't going well. She wasn't that happy about doing that. So it was one of the first tasks. And I think when you kind of roll your sleeves up with founders and show that you will go in and do anything, you know, go through 75 resumes and find somebody who can help recruit, which is the first thing I did. You build trust fairly quickly. Like, hey, this isn't a guy who has a suit and only sits in his office. You know, I was in there, you know, one of the first things I was quite proud of was Matt was very, very tight on money. Okay. Like, nobody could spend money. And I was like, you know what? I think we should feed this crew. It was about 15 people at the time. And so I said, look, I don't want to go argue with the guys about this is a good use of money. I'm just going to go, and it was a Subway right across the street. I went and negotiated with the guy. I got extra cookies. But I said, I don't want you to tell them where they're coming from. I just want you to bring food on Monday. I missed a few things, like you got to tell people not to bring their lunch, right? Duh. But anyway, so the food starts to arrive for first Monday for a month. And then everybody was thrilled. Okay. And then I went to Matt and I said, Matt, what do you think that was worth? Oh, he goes, it was fantastic, blah, blah, blah. I said, what do you think it cost me? And he goes, I don't know. And I told him, and it was like $800. And he said, oh, we should do that. And I said, yeah. And that got started, the Food Mondays. But it's one of those things where, and I got reimbursed, but it's one of those things where sometimes you do show as opposed to try and debate, you know, the merits of, you know, various things. And, you know, you just try and build trust with both kind of formal things and informal things. And, you know, in the early days, there was a lot to be done. And I arrived first and left last. And I did that at Pythian as well. So I'm a bit of a grinder. And that builds trust, and they see how your style is. And obviously I brought structure fairly quickly because of some of the models that I used at Pythian. And over time, they were just, you know, very, very happy to go from a place that was fairly growing quickly, and hence the chaos, to a place that was fairly organized and where we were going.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And you'll oftentimes hear entrepreneurs and investors talk about startups operating right on the edge of chaos. Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps your experience sitting on many boards gave you a comfort of stepping into that situation and perhaps knowing what needs to take place to bring some order to that chaos. You know, it's interesting. Your anecdote about the Subway, you know, leads to another question I'd love to get your perspective on, which is just building a culture. Is it an intentional thing, or is it the product of the personalities of